beautiful. Lorded. Oh, I think they. Speaking of Lord of Ring, I think that the One Ring TTRPG just released like a second edition rule set. Maybe no. It's called the One Ring. I've heard that like the first edition was pretty not great, but I've heard that they've been working on it.
I don't actually think I've heard of that one. The only one that I really know about is the one called Fellowship. But,
that's older, right?
It's older. It's supposed to be very good.
Yeah.
If you're into Tolkien stuff, it's like very well spec'd for that.
Interestingly enough, you know what I'm actually very curious to try out? The Song of Ice and Fire game.
Really? Is that good?
It's supposed to be. I've heard disagreeing things, but the people that did sell it to me, like, who I did hear talk well about it, like, made it sound very cool. Like, it plays with internal politics really well, and it's a game where you can legitimately make a character without no combat specking and, like, do very well.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and, like, you make, like, houses and play and like work through like nobility and shit. It seems really cool.
No, that seems tight actually.
Yeah. I mean I don't know much about the series in general, but
I watched the first few seasons of it. I think I saw like 3 or 4 seasons, but I definitely dropped out probably like halfway through the show.
I think
it was a good show. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I got to like season 5, but I never read any of them, and I wasn't like a stringent follower of it.
I definitely never read any of them.
Yeah.
I tried reading the first book, and I'm not gonna lie, I actually hated it.
Not for you.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. Like they're obviously good books and shit, and I really enjoy the characters that have come out of that world. But like, I don't know. He follows a lot in some of the worst ways for me, with like the way Tolkien would write. Like go on and on for like multiple pages about like the food at like a banquet table, and it's like, dude, I don't fucking care.
Oh, see, I love that shit about Tolkien.
I can't do it, man. Like
some of my favorite.
I respect it. I respect it for the level of detail that it is, but after like a half a page, I'm just like, okay, it's food.
I don't know. Tom Bombadil's feast sounded dope. Honeycombs and sweet creams, and like I was like, what the fuck is this man eating? I wanted it.
Gonna know about the fucking dog of the mailman of the neighbor of the bee who made the honey that was in this comb. It's like, dude.
I mean, like some of that.
You gotta chill.
Some of that little shit is like what I love about Tolkien. Like I love like how he describes the creature outside of the Mines of Moria. Like it's like a paragraph, and it's one of my favorite paragraphs in the book. It's like.
I don't actually think I know it off the top of my head. I need to check that out.
It's like some ancient evil, and it's just, oh man, it really gets me. It's like when they find that orc statue before Boromir fucking eats it, and its head's all pulled off, and like that shit, like I don't know, like.
No, I mean there were certain parts of it that I thought were amazing. I actually did read the Lord of the Rings books.
Yeah, we've talked about Loader. You like Loader, right?
Oh, I love Loader. I definitely have my gripes about it, which I just talked about one of them. Like the whole level of description thing for me, I think is a bit more than any kind of thing that I personally have an interest in. I have a huge respect for it.
Yeah.
My other big gripe about Tolkien, and honestly, it just became kind of funny at certain points, is. That man loves songs.
Damn right he does.
I'm a musician, and I don't love songs, I think, as much as Tolkien loves songs. Like, that whole scene in Return of the King with Éomer, or Éowyn, fighting the Witch King or whatever.
Yeah.
Where, she's like, like, no man can defeat me. I'm like, I am no man.
Dope.
It's like, there's a song in there in the book.
Yeah.
She fucking sings a song in the middle of the battle. It's like, dude, what the fuck is going on right now?
In Tolkien's defense, like, when you make a whole language, sometimes you gotta write some songs in it.
Well, and like, and the thing is, it kind of, for what Tolkien was trying to do with Lord of the Rings, like definitely hearkening back to like those sort of epic Odyssey tales, that kind of stuff happens. So like, I get it when you look at it like as a historical work. I respect the level of like care that went into it.
But he's a big nerd.
For me, just as a reader, it totally takes me out of it. So yeah, it's those are the things I have with Tolkien. But I love Lord of the Rings. Like,
it's funny.
I realized it's been like 6 months or something since I sat down and like watched the trilogy. So I've been kind of passively hinting to Leslie that like, hey, you know, like maybe we should like watch Lord of the Rings again. You know, like it's been a while.
My dad bought me a copy of it's called Board of the Rings. It was written by Doug Kenny and Henry Beard, the guys who started National Lampoons.
Yeah.
And they wrote it like 1969 when they were still graduating from Harvard, and they were like fucking lunatics in Harvard, and like they were lunatics all around, like fucking. Anyway, National Lampoons is an insane story, but it is. So it's still in print. It's the longest running work of parody. It's the longest running print of a work of parody ever. And I was reading someone who had their doctorate in Tolkien history or something was talking about it, and he was talking about this specific scene, and he goes on to break down. He's like, what they don't understand, they like wrote this scene about like going through this pit, and he's like, that this scene was like pieces of this, things very much like this, were cut from Lord of the Rings. Like they were so accurate, they almost wrote a piece of Lord of the Rings that didn't get written.
No, those books are wild. Are we live?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, cool, tight. Hey everybody, welcome to Terra Mundi on Surf's Up. We are Corey. Just to be clear, before I make the announcement, we're keeping it short tonight, correct?
Yeah, your boy's tired. I don't know why. Like, I had a great week. Like,
no, same actually. It's been a good day. I actually chalk it up to the weather. It's been super rainy, and I'm just always very sleepy whenever that happens.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm actually feeling the same way. But for those of you watching the stream, we do have kind of a fun conversation today because we finally get to start moving into one of the bigger mechanical pieces of the game that we really haven't talked about yet, which is our caravan. So for those of you who are, maybe just tuning in, maybe aren't sure what we're talking about, this is Vault Peddlers. It's a game of community and world building in which you play a team of basically like Indiana Jones archaeologists in a far-flung future, going through the edifice of this past world, which we've been building over the last couple weeks in Microscope, which has been a really fun time. And as you, as a group, go out through this world, you basically are this sort of ragtag group of nomads, which we have been calling this whole time the Caravan. One of the things that we've said kind of from day one is that we really want to have the Caravan to sort of have its own specs and to have its own stake in the world and the way that it influences not just the fiction, but also like the mechanical gameplay. And we've been kind of dancing around how to make this system work for a long time. And we've gotten to a point with the world building and the lore building that it's kind of the next thing that needs to happen. So Corey, I know you have some ideas for how you want to do this. So I'm going to let you take it from here, and we can kind of suss it out between the two of us from there.
So where we are at in game building right now is that we have a lot of loose systems that are starting to, and this has been going on if you've been watching the more and more as we build this out, that things are starting to get interconnected, and you can't like pull a lever without affecting a dial. Like that is the that's the goal. It is to make a mechanical system in which things interact. And those things are starting to interact in ways that we can't talk about specific things without talking about other things, without rewriting something we've already done, which we've already done a dozen times, which is cool because that's part of the process.
Corey messaged me this week and was like, "Hey, don't hate me, but I think I figured out some stuff with the Caravan, and it means we may need to redo some stuff with character creation."
Yes.
This is a new Taylor that you're seeing on this.
And this one fucking loves math.
Oh, love it. All them fancy numbers.
I'm back to lunatic papers. Yeah. So we had a nice break off of those, but here we are, back at it.
So much for that.
This one's torn to be the right size, I guess. I don't know what I do. So we need to talk about economy. And this is something that I think a lot of games do wrong. It is a very complicated thing to do, and it has like it is such a hard one to wrap around because it is like this adjacent power creep that goes on with your personal power creep of character leveling, which is like an inevitable outcome of playing tabletop role-playing games. Taylor could probably attest to it with his last campaign of Ruma that he just ran, which again was a rules light system that you run into the bounds of quickly. But I mean, there's like Dungeons and Dragons has a ton of power creep, and that's because the game is heroic fantasy. So like every level you get doper things. So then like they have to release errata, but the errata makes you even doper, and like it's this arms race where
yeah, very much. Arms race is exactly the right word for it, actually.
Yeah.
The world gets deadlier and you get more strong, and then the world gets deadlier in response, and then you get stronger. No, that's a really good way to boil it down.
And it has some pretty terrible mechanical effects. Like D&D, like a lot of games end up with this, especially games that don't utilize like a wound system, is you end up with HP bloat. What does HP bloat do? Well, it makes your combat last forever. So the unintended consequence of this heroic fantasy is that now we're having combat that feels bedraggled and just like never ending and boring, where like I'm doing 400 damage, but what does that mean? And
it doesn't mean anything. It's like paying for something in yen. It's like I'm spending like $3,000 yen to buy like a gumball. Like it's nothing.
And the same thing happens in economy. And I'm gonna it sounds like I'm tearing into D&D a little bit here. I probably am.
Well,
sorry.
We kind of are. We've talked about this before. I mean, like, both of us come from a place where like we're both pretty familiar with D&D. Corey certainly more so than I am. And I love D&D. I love like high fantasy. I love like epic adventures, but like I can't deny that the things you're saying are absolutely true, you know? Like I only got to DM. What were you guys when at the end of One Shot City? I think you were like level 8 or something like that.
I was level 9, I think, but yeah.
That's what it was, yeah, because you had that special thing. I mean, even then, at that level, I remember as a DM having to like I had downloaded like the Dungeon Master's Guide. I like had bought like a PDF of the monster manual to try and find like tougher shit to try and find for you guys, because at like level 8 and level 9 y'all were already just like murder machines that like it became really, really hard to actually manage the group, which I think is actually a part of the reason why that campaign kind of turned out the way it did sort of thematically. But it's definitely something we want to avoid here.
I mean, that's like unavoidable in D&D too. Like the threat rating system. What's it called? Creature rating, critical.
It's
the CR.
It's a CR.
That shit falls apart at just about that level because because you can't accurately gauge those kinds of abilities. Like, I guess this group can defeat this, but it really depends on action economy, because like if a group of level 6 people are going up against like a mind flayer, if that mind flayer gets a mind blast off right away, you're boned, you're fucked. No way you can win that. But if you don't, you will demolish it, you will slaughter it, there will be no contest.
Right, well that's the thing is like, and I remember having this thought too, was like there was a point where like I forget what it was, like y'all had come across like a dragon or something like that, and I remember thinking like, the way that this is set up, either I'm gonna murder all of them in like round 1, or they're gonna just like absolutely destroy this thing. And like I don't really want it to be the first one, but like I also don't want it to feel like the second one.
Sure.
Like neither of those are desirable outcomes for these kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think D&D, like, all credit to them, it does try to like combat some of these, does try to like utilize, but that's where you get into the trouble with the CR system, like, because the CR system works until about level 8 and then it falls apart, and like then like CR whatever doesn't really mean anything. And when you have a new GM, like, granted, they've led someone from this level to this level, so they're experienced enough, but still, they don't know that the power creep gets to that point. Anyways, I digress. My point being that economy does the same thing.
Real quick before we get into economy, can you on the stream bring down the Word doc to...
Oh yeah.
Under Caravan Dice Mechanics, I have a little subheading for World Economy where I feel like that's a good place to put stuff in.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Sorry, go ahead.
So... Economy happens this same way. Like, when's the last time you played a game of Dungeons & Dragons where your money means anything?
No, never.
Because it only really means something in the later levels where your arcane focus or your material pouch no longer can apply those materials, like, because it's a $50,000 diamond. But at that point, you have $50,000 to shit out, or diamonds for days.
And that's also assuming you're a spellcaster.
Yeah.
If I'm like a level like 20 barbarian, like what the fuck does gold mean to me? It means absolutely nothing. You know. So,
and like. D&D parlance, and a lot of games do this, where like that economy falls down, and then they have, are dealing with things like the meta economy. Meta economy being like inspiration in D&D is meta economy, giving out advantage and disadvantage, things like that. Luck in Monster of the Week, that is meta economy. Like, it is a spendable resource that is hard coded into the game mechanics, and you also have like personal character resources, like key points for a monk, or spell slots, or things of this nature. And I had the brilliant idea to say all one thing. One thing. Now,
love it.
My concept here is simple, and we'll talk about Bloat again, because we're going to have to, because as much as I just complained about it, we are going to grapple with it a lot with this system, I think, and it is going to be something that we are going to have to really be focused on solving. But I think as we build out this game, and probably in no small part to my own doing, we have a lot of systems that are running adjacent to each other, which can be very intimidating for a player to go onto. We have action points, we have points to like points, experience points. We have features. By the way, I came up with a naming system. I wanted to for features, so we don't call them feats anymore.
Okay.
And we have all these things that I think is intimidating to run when you start picking up a system and reading it, and it's one of those things that I think is what leads people to run games incorrectly. I'm always a proponent of when you first run a game, you should ditch homebrew. Don't get any wild ideas. You should run rules as written until you're comfortable in the system. If you want to get finicky after that, you want to start messing around after that, great, you understand how the game works, but until you're at that point, like, you're going to have the unintended consequences of throwing things off and maybe leading to a bad experience, but maybe not, maybe you'll have fun anyways. That's just me personally.
You may have fun, and I mean, coming from a background where when I first got into tabletops, I was all about homebrew. And mainly the reason, if I'm being real with myself about that, is because I was very intimidated by like more built out systems that had all of this stuff to memorize and know. So I was just like, well, fuck it, I'll just make it up. I mean, that's the whole point, right? The thing is, you know, even with systems like Dungeons and Dragons, I mean, Corey said it pretty well already, like that system is built that way for a reason. So yeah, I could not agree more. Like, it's not to say that homebrew is inherently bad. I think there's a lot of good that comes from it.
For sure.
But much in the same way that, like, when you look at art history, like the great artists who, like, you know, people like Dali, for example, are like known for, you know, taking the rules and totally breaking them. And people get into painting for the very first time and they're like, I want to be like Dali. I want to say, like, no rules and this is all my thing. The thing is, like, people like Dali or like these other great painters who like defied genres and broke genres only did so because they understood the genre they were breaking really, really well.
Yeah.
You know, like, you don't get to that point where you can say, no, those rules are fucking dumb, here's what I'm going to do instead, without being able to say, like, I understand what all of these rules actually are. So, yeah, I thought I would have disagreed with you, but I completely agree.
Like, you gotta practice good fundamentals.
Yeah, get those fundamentals. Let's go fundamentals.
Let's see a layup, baby. I mean, it's important. Like, I'm not saying you have to understand, like, dice theory or game theory in order to make homebrew, but you do have to understand the mechanics of the system as they are written. And anytime that you skip over those rules, and I've been guilty of it a ton. I've been playing tabletop games since I was in 6th grade. I'm like, oh, that seems hard. I'm not going to do that.
I feel you. I started with fucking Shadowrun.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea? I feel like that's the reason why I initially leaned so far to homebrew, is because just like, I started with Shadowrun and I was like, this has fucking grenade mechanics for like blast radius and I don't want to do that shit. But like, I don't know, I would agree though. Like, you have to understand what the rules are in order to be able to say, like, those rules are dumb.
Yeah.
Like, those rules don't make sense.
Or at the very least, they don't work at my table.
Yeah, exactly, right? That's the other thing. It's like, if you try something and it makes sense in the theory, but your players, you know, take it and do something weird with it, which, as anybody who's ever run a table before knows, that's liable to happen. Like, you should at least try to see how it works in play. And then once you've actually seen it, like, you know, this is how it works, or this is how it could be adjusted, that to me is when you start making those, like, homebrew style tweaks.
So in that vein, though, since we do have a lot of these mechanics, I think it's important to simplify some things down, and I think that this is going to do that. So my idea is to take character resources like magic weapon activation, this meta currency, and actual in-game currency, and like improvement points for your character, and bunch it all into one thing that I have been calling to myself Pettycoin.
Gotcha. Which I told you before, I'm going to tell you now on the stream, sounds like a cryptocurrency.
Shit, this shit's on the blockchain, dog.
Alright, Elon Musk, tell me about your game. Tell me about your Dogecoin.
Yeah, argue with like some fundamental members of Bitcoin about how Bitcoin's actually bad. Because whatever.
No, I'm not.
A conversation for a different time. I don't want to get bullied by Elon Musk on the internet. Which we joke, but
I was about to say normally I would say like, oh no, we're way too small, but no, that's we have one viewer right now.
Elon Musk. Oh fuck! It's entirely too accurate.
Oh my god.
Okay, so how is Pettycoin going to work? So. It's, I think, going to work in a lot of different ways. I don't think necessarily it's going to... I think we could use it to activate some character features as like a currency to activate those things. Obviously, you'll use it to buy in-game items, which we've already talked about, simplifying the idea of in-game items, like having the skinning of an item be up to the player or the GM, and then having it. I think. You know who does this? Cyberpunk Red does this with. They do it with not unarmed weapons. Sorry, with melee weapons, where they have light melee weapon, medium melee weapon, heavy melee weapon, extra heavy melee weapon. Which I love that. Like it's like, why do we have to go into the rigmarole of this? They're all generally going to do the same thing here.
Right.
And I think our game focuses on features more than it does on the gear porn side of things. So I think erring that way is going to be important. Which brings me to, like, how it, like, obviously you will get this stuff. We've talked at length a bit about,
No, it's fine. Catch that thought.
Well, what's it called? The where you're parlaying with what are we calling pre-built adventures?
Modules?
No, yeah, we were calling them
contracts.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So contracts like before gameplay or like during gameplay, but right at the start, before you do something that is not a and I'm talking in a bunch of different spheres right now, and I'm going to be, so I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Contracts are like it's like downtime mechanic that gets you into the gameplay mechanic prime, and that is how like you fulfill your contract. You have you earn Pettycoin doing it, or you earn a relic doing it. But you do that by, like, generally, and this isn't the only thing contracts can be used for, but, like, going into a vault and then getting the things out of it and peddling them. Hence the name Vault Peddlers. Obviously, that's not everything that you can do in the game, but yeah, sure. Like, if you're going into a city to do a more city-oriented contract, same rules apply. But the idea being, you have based on the Caravan features, which are features that you build out with your group, adjacent to the features that you build out with your player team, you have a dice pool in the center that anyone can pull from to add to their rolls before they roll the roll. So you want to add, hey, this looks hard. Let's add a D7. I almost said a D7. What the fuck is wrong with me?
I really want to see that.
like, I want to add a D6 to this. Is everyone cool with that? Yeah, cool. And then as you play, that pile dwindles.
Right.
And so that's how we get into, like, this is what I've been calling the knife balance, the knife's edge balance of our game, which is everything you do, you have to walk this knife's edge. So I think that is how, you get your general petty coin. So you go to, everyone gets in some agreement process, whatever, solves it. Then you have drains on petty coin. So my issue here is, like, obviously that can build up really fast. So let's talk about drains to petty coin. Okay, improvement points. Anything you spend in order to level up your character, that comes out of petty coin. And I think even more so, like, before you can spend anything on improvement points, everyone has I don't think anyone has a personal wallet in this game. I think that you have the coffer of the caravan. You spend on the caravan first, and then anything left over, you divide up equally to the party. What this does is, first, it reinforces the idea of community. It reinforces the idea of the caravan being an integral system to this game, and it lets you build out, so you build out that dice pool. So it's like, okay, what do we want to build out here? Do we want to have more in our dice pool, or do we want to have a higher ranks in order to roll from raw? Like, what's important to us here? How are we doing this? So the actual one-for-one we're going to have to walk through, but I think we can actually take the point cost system that we currently have and utilize it, so long as we limit the suggested amount of petty coin resolved for each contract. So this is like where I'm talking about bloat. Like, this is where it's going to get complicated, and it's because as you level up, you're going to do harder contracts, so you will expect higher rewards. So we need to have more drain systems in order to compensate for that, which naturally the progression system that we set up does by ranking up. So caravan system will have to build the same way. Another way I think we can do this is, because we're focusing on, like, this vault peddling, and because of what we built out last sessions, we have these vaults, right, full of relics of the past, and magic items, I think, is how we solve another drain. Relics would be built out in much the same way that characters or the caravan is, which is to say, they have featured actions on them. The difference is, relic featured actions can only be activated with petty coin.
Wait, say that last part again?
So relic featured actions, just like your featured action, like if you have smoke bomb as a feature, and you can do that as an action. These are magic items that you get through high level play or whatever, that have extra actions on them, but you can only activate those actions by spending that currency.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
This, I think, reinforces the idea that economy is important to our game, that it is a central tenet of our world, that, like, gold rules everything around me. And it's a drain in resources that is going to ramp up with economy as we go through the game, because the more powerful relics you get, the higher cost those features are going to be. So we have a built-in drain that scales.
I also like the fact that one of the things that we talked about a lot with Vault Peddlers is this idea that, like, we don't want to have our players being like these invincible murder machines like what you have in games like D&D. And I think that this is actually a very good way to get around that. My initial response to that was like, oh, I don't know if I like that, because I feel like that's going to take away from, how cool it is when somebody gets that thing. but actually, I think that it's going to make it way cooler when it's used.
Yeah.
Like, I think that the more you limit that resource, I think that that's going to make it something that is used a lot more sparingly, which makes the players a lot weaker, and, you know, limits that sort of power creep that we've been talking about at the beginning of the stream. And I think it's going to make it even cooler, like, when you actually do decide to use something like that. So I'm actually very down with that idea.
Well, because it's not just swinging a +5 sword, it's I get to fucking activate this huge damage bonus, like, when everyone agrees, yeah, we need to murk this thing right now, like...
Yeah.
Which I think, like, again, gets us back to the topic of, like, table talk being an integral part of this game.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what other things was I thinking of? Oh, so for actual caravan resources, and this is where we're going to start talking about things that we don't have built out yet. But I think we need to have, I think it is going to be important to have a ledger during play of caravan resources and their associated die cost, because as you spend those die, you're going to have to pay things out of the petty coin that you earn. So, let me explain. We've talked, I was just talking about it, how featured actions are an important part of this game. And the caravan system we've talked about is no less the case. So, you build out your caravan by buying these features on it. And maybe it is... you bought a blacksmith, so now you have a blacksmith roaming along the caravan. You bought a forge as a supplement to the blacksmith, so now you have these two things. Both of these add a caravan die, or maybe it elevates the die from a D4 to a D6 in the case of a forge and a blacksmith, whatever. But the cost of these features will be written out in the book as upkeep and repair. So... okay. Each of those will have a petty coin cost. When you utilize one of those die on a contract run, you have to, on your way back, pay the upkeep cost. So every time you use one of these die from the center, you'll have to, on your return from the money you earned, pay the upkeep cost on that to keep it, like, you know, to keep him supplied, to keep him whatever.
Sure. Basically the equivalent of saying, like, you know, I need to do this thing, and all I have is, like, this $20 that technically belongs to my mom. Like, I'll use it now, and then, like, you know, when I get my paycheck, basically, I have to pay my mom back.
Correct. That is your upkeep cost. However, should you ever complete a run and not have the petty coin in order to pay back a featured slot on your caravan, it falls into disrepair. And what that means is you have to pay the exorbitantly higher cost of repairing that thing as soon as you have the money to. And it would cost a certain number of days, whatever. So maybe next time you guys play, you don't have that caravan resource available to you until you pay that repair fee. And could have the effect of also, like, maybe you run the blacksmith out for keeping it in disrepair for so long. So we have this balancing act again that we have to play. It's a huge drain on petty coin, which is your major resource, and it's going to make starting out very difficult, and you're going to want to build out the resources of your caravan. Because
So let me clarify something in play then. So, like, let's say we're facing a really difficult challenge and we are, you know, running low on dice, and all that we have left are the caravan resources. What does that actually look like as far as what's sitting in front of me? Are we saying basically that, like, D20s and D12s and D10s are specifically, those are, like, the things representing caravan resources?
Correct. Yeah, the associated
die type.
Yeah, the associated die type. In the same way, much in the same way that we have skills and shit worked out with evolving die, is how I was picturing these. Like, you have a blacksmith who starts as a D4. As you add benefits to him, he can do more things. Like, not even just in game.
Fuck. Okay, so the more you build out your caravan, the more expensive that risk is when you decide to like use those die.
Correct, and it gives you a higher dice that you can add to your roll during main play, and during
bigger cost after.
Well, and not just that, but they have narrative effects too. Like having a blacksmith is going to have narrative effects on your game in that like you can repair your shit pretty easily with like I mean that's going to be GM fiat, but like we can probably hard encode some of that. But like it has to have narrative effects. Yeah, it will have to have narrative effects. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm very excited.
You're fine. I'm actually enjoying this. This is a number conversation I'm following so far.
Well, see, we're going to have to balance it so that the narrative effects of these features are things that we want. Maybe they're things that help in the conversation pieces that we have. Maybe it's things that help in the downtime procedures of this game, because we're going to have to talk about downtime at some point soon. So, like, we have to have those things be important enough where, like, you don't just want to rank up. You need these things. You need these resources.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I love it. Yep. One second here. So during play, players can choose to use one of the associated die types Caravan is resource and to roll. However, this means
you have to pay the upkeep cost.
Have to pay that back following the completion of the job, or that resource falls into disrepair.
Yeah, let's use a couple. Let's use the word upkeep costs so that we have a mechanical association that we can throw onto features for the caravan. And then disrepair, I think that is the disrepair cost. I think, like, now we're starting to build out the caravan a little bit. Like, the actual mechanical effects of it.
As the resource grows and evolves into larger die types.
And better resources. So too do the costs.
Yeah, so too does the cost. I like that. Okay, tight. Let's see here. Okay.
Sorry, I'm gonna scroll down.
The biggest thing I think that we need to do as far as numbers go, when it comes to like petty coin, like what this stuff actually is, I think a general question we need to answer is how much is it actually worth in relation to the die type. I don't know if that's getting ahead of where we are right now, but to me that seems like a really fundamental question that we've got to answer before we can really determine like what a D4 resource constitutes, or like a D6 or a D12.
Yeah, this is this is what I was talking about with, like, we might have to rebuild character creation a bit, because those costs have to be in line with our character creation costs.
Yeah.
And the verbiage we use has to be the same, because now it's like not just it's petty coin builds your character too.
Gotcha. So for anybody out there wanting to build your tabletop game, please take a note from us. You want to do your economy first.
I guess so. I mean, if your game like does the same thing ours does, though, like
if your game centers around world economy, then make sure you build your economy first.
Okay. Two fucking anti-capitalists building a game about capitalism.
Nothing wrong could happen here.
Well, Marx wrote Das Kapital, so it's fine.
What could go wrong?
Just every time he's like, what am I doing?
What even is a dollar? I'm just gonna put that in the world economy section. What even is a dollar?
So, Yeah, I don't know if that's the conversation we need to be having right now. It is a conversation we need to have. We need to have, because we need to have the basic, because we can write down too, like, there can be differentials in those costs. Like, the cost of a blacksmith we don't have to have it just be tiered and then tiered only. Like, we can play around with those things a bit more if things seem narratively more impactful. I'm harping on blacksmith and I don't know why, but
I mean, if you have an example that works, I mean, yeah, you got to go for it.
I think it's important that we have we suggest in the rules that one player tracks the ledger, or the GM can track it, I guess. But I think it's more fun to have a player track the ledger of the caravan resources that you're spending on a run. Like, hey, we've spent a D6, and then the GM's like, well, you got to repair this and this and this and this. And then on the topic of character creation, on the topic of improvement points. So this was another thing that I had messaged you about earlier, because who else would I message about?
Hey, I know I haven't talked to you since high school, but let me tell you about this.
Sir, this is the bank.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Okay. Do you like it, though?
I'm just saying, like, this is really neat, though.
So, I think in the same sphere, you go through this. So the process is, after you get back from a vault, the peddling process of the game is that you are obeying the contract. So you get your pay, whatever, and then you have your the resources you got back from it. You pay your upkeep costs, you pay your disrepair costs if you can, or if you don't want to, we can have mechanical effects be like, okay, morale dropped in your caravan enough, maybe we should have a morale tracker in your caravan. Actually, we definitely probably should have morale be a stat in the caravan. You just please write that down. I can't write, you know this.
I got you. Here. So players can choose not to pay the upkeep costs, but this can have negative effects on caravan's morale if neglected too long. I'm just going to put a note here.
You lose the resource, or you can lose the resource, or lose other resources.
No, that's not what the note is going to be.
Corey doesn't know how to write.
Make a morale table.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if we should even have a table. Well, you know what? We probably should have a table, a rollable table, alongside the morale stat.
I don't even think it needs to be a morale table. I think, or I don't even think it needs to be a rolling table. I just mean it needs to be a point where if you lose a resource and you fall below like a certain number or something along those lines, then this is the effect. This is like what the morale looks like in your caravan.
Yeah.
That's my idea of it. Not necessarily something that rolls. It's just something that's like helps you read the effect of neglecting that cost.
Which probably, like, you can do things to offset, so you can put things in disrepair for longer if that's the kind of group you want to run. Like, maybe you build up the spirit of your camp, like, high to stat out, or you have entertainment troop in there, like, okay, this has the mechanical effects that, like, we can let things fall into disrepair a bit more because which changes the game, because it's like, okay, you don't have to just do it this way, like, you can...
Well, and so, I mean, since you're pulling from Cyberpunk, I'm actually going to pull from L5R, because that's fresh in my head right now. I mean, they have a system that's all about, like, the way that your character is seen by, like, the rest of the world. They have, like, glory, honor, and status. And, like, these are basically just, like, points that are associated with, like, your character's standing in the world. I feel like that could be, like, a really good sort of kind of a template to sort of use when we try to evaluate sort of the morale and sort of the way that the members of your caravan see the caravan itself, whether or not they think it's in a good position, and things that can affect it.
Oh yeah, and like I love the idea of that, because like maybe you're fucking not an entertainment caravan, maybe you're like sort of a war band, like
sure,
yeah,
sure, maybe you're the kind of caravan that doesn't necessarily care normally about like upkeep and stuff like that, and you keep up morale other ways. Well, that's cool, but that still means that like the lack of resources your caravan has is going to be a constant drain no matter what.
Yeah,
you know.
So it's all a matter of how you play it and like how you want to play a troop, and that's really exciting to me. So
yeah, I like that a lot.
This brings me, so after you pay your upkeep and your repair costs, next we go to Caravan Advancement, which is it goes into that central coffer, and everyone has a conversation about, hey, how are we going to improve the caravan? No one gets a personal wallet. It is the central coffer.
I'm going to put this up here. Caravan Advancement.
I gotta find you.
Contract. Earned petty coin.
Goes to caravan upkeep and repair first.
We'll say A. Negotiate caravan upkeep, repairs, and advancements, right?
Yeah.
And B. Negotiate individual advancement. But let me ask you this: are we also going to be having them negotiate, like, let's say you got really hurt on a job? Are we going with like the D&D like 8 hours of sleep and you're fine thing, or are they also going to use that petty coin to buy like medical services?
I was literally just about to talk about this.
Yeah.
I don't think we do the 8 hours of sleep and you're fine thing. Whoa, I'm frozen. No, I'm just weird looking.
No, you're just blurry.
Cool. I fucking Barry Allen at you.
Oh, give me that soft light.
So, I don't think we do that. Here's the thing, because I mentioned this earlier. I think like paying the disrepair costs so many days. As well, like, because it just costs that many days to repair that resource, whatever. I also think that we can put another drain in the system with these associated feats that we're buying for the caravan, have a cost, like, at the end of a certain amount of time. Kind of like in the same way that Cyberpunk has rent. Like, this is all due. You have to pay from the coffers, whatever. It's to keep everyone alive. It's to keep your community thriving. But what my real reason for doing this is that, and this is where we're talking about interconnectivity, I think that games that prioritize time have real downtime mechanics that matter. And that's what it is. Like, if we want to have downtime, like, D&D, notably, doesn't have fucking shit for downtime mechanics. And it's because time basically doesn't matter.
Basically not. I mean, like, unless you're actually in combat, no. Like, it doesn't matter even a little bit. Like, it's like, okay, you cast, like, a ritual spell, 10 minutes.
Yeah. So, I think this is a really good way to do that, and I think as far as, like, actually improving that ability, your camp can buy a medicus tent with a doctor. Like, that can be, like, a resource that you can buy, you know? So, Cyberpunk does something where it's like you heal your body's score every day of that you don't do anything. Something in line with that, I think, makes a lot of sense. Like, prioritizing these downtime days, these 0 days where you have to hang out around the campfire and, like, chill is probably a good idea. And it also gives you that balance where it's like, guys, like, I know we need to rest, but, like, we're getting dangerously close to where we're going to lose some caravan resources unless we... unless we get, like, a job or we start peddling some wares, whatever. Start hoodwinking some folks.
Yeah, so then we would actually put another drain on the petty coin as just, like, if you go too long between jobs.
Exactly.
Yeah, alright.
And you...
1 sec, let me add that to the drains real quick.
And you have to go too long because... sometimes you just need to rest. Like, your group needs to rest. We can definitely play with that with caravan morale and stuff, and, like, maybe travel rate, something like that.
The players go long between jobs. Also experience drain on the caravans.
In regular, well, you know what we could do? We already have the upkeep costs. Upkeep is during use. Upkeep also comes at a certain time, like just a certain set date. You have to pay the upkeep costs, or a certain maybe it's a generalized upkeep score for your caravan or something that's derived off upkeep costs.
Oh, so it's like paying rent basically.
Yeah, essentially.
Like you have to. Yeah, like you have to pay this much no matter what.
I mean, it doesn't have to be rent. It's you're buying food for the caravan. You're buying supplies for the caravan.
The point is, it's a regular payment you have to make. It's not rent literally, but in terms of everything that rent is by utility of that payment, you're paying rent.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I like the idea of giving players consequences, and I like the idea of, saying like, well, you used this blacksmith last time, their resources are really drained now, so you have to refill them. To me, that makes sense as far as an economy thing. I also think it's cool to say, like, a month without doing, like, any new jobs, and so as a result, everybody's resources are drained. Like, you have to fill those back up.
So maybe we can do something. Maybe we can meet in the middle here.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of having to go through each individual system and fill the resources, I think that's going to get too meticulous.
Yeah.
And instead of having a flat rent that if you don't pay, like, dire consequences, maybe we have a scale that, like, if you don't pay this amount, you'll start affecting morale in, like, the opposite.
You need to keep it at a certain level, and if it goes down,
yeah,
that's it. Yeah. No, I'm a dummy. That's literally what L5R does.
Oh, really?
Cool. I mean, it's something very similar where it's like it's a static number. And, like, an example is, like, if you do something that's, like, dishonorable or, like, against the code of Bushido, then, like, your number goes down a certain number, on this, like, scale. And if you reach below a certain point, then, like, you're liable to not be a samurai and to, like, be kicked out of, like, your family or your clan. And so, like, you're balancing, like, these three things of, like, glory, honor, and status, and trying to sort of find the happy balance between all three of them, but the point basically being is, like, there's no, like, monthly upkeep. It's just based on, like, the actions that you take.
Yeah.
And where you land is just sort of where you land.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense though.
Because that way it's not a hard line, which I think, like, because I like the idea of the rent system in that it is like, okay, you have to pay this because it prioritizes community. You have to keep your community going. But I also agree with you in that hardlining it like that feels disingenuous to the game, and I think the sliding scale system there sort of, like, gives you that nebulous play we've been working with where you have to balance.
I think the sliding scale works better for sure. I just don't like the rent idea because, like, let's say, like, you use that blacksmith or whatever, and, like, you need to, like, upkeep the blacksmith. Well, then what that means is that now you have to pay both the upkeep on the blacksmith and you also have to pay the rent on it. Which, like, for a group of, like, wandering nomads or whatever, I just don't feel like that fits. I feel like it's a needs-based society when you're in the caravan. So paying like the rent idea doesn't make sense to me. It's just like, does it work? Cool. Okay, let's spend the money on something that needs it.
Sure, but like so my idea here is that like the needs are at a certain point, like you needs foods, like you needs,
for sure.
Yeah. So I think my argument for the sliding scale, and maybe it's not every month, but like this is a cost that you're paying in order to keep morale up. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's payment from coffers into a certain
What if we just made it? But what if we just made it all one big sliding morale scale?
Well, maybe the stats on the caravan, and this might be getting ahead of ourselves, this might be for a different stream. We're probably getting too deep into something that is going to take our full attention.
It's going to take our full attention for a couple of weeks.
But maybe your stats as a caravan are more transitive than they are as a player, where you're buying ranks and those ranks are static. Maybe it's like you can pay petty coin into this to like increase the livelihood for a couple weeks or something. And this gets into the conversation we need to have about like what I was talking about earlier, is like a time frame. We need to start working out a time frame for things to go on if we want to do systems at all like this. If we want to have downtime and things, like if we want to have a healing system that's more than sleep for 8 hours, we need to start thinking about like a fucking calendar.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah. No, I actually agree. We definitely need to find out. I mean, if nothing else, on like an individual basis, we have to figure out how long it would take you to heal. Like, I don't know if we're doing a fully accurate, like, you're going to need like 6 months to a year before you can walk again.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to stay away from the like fully gritty realism side of things, but...
Right. I feel like in this world, it would make sense that it's a little bit faster than that. I also really, I don't know, I don't like the idea that, like, oh yeah, I went to bed with 1 hit point, and now I'm great, baby. I'm back to normal.
I should state, though, that I do agree that paying the upkeep cost during a run and then having another hard point where you have to pay that upkeep cost again feels too hardline. And it feels like we're just doubling down on the same thing. The idea we need to work with, but like there needs to be. It can't be straight GM fiat, and like we need to have like.
No. There has to be a system for it.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%. And I think that we actually have laid down a fairly good skeleton. One of the things that we need to do for sure is we need to decide what resources the caravan actually has.
Yeah.
And I think that once we figure that out, maybe we can get a better idea of like how much those resources are going to run versus like how much an average contract pays, which is another thing. That's like the other half of that equation. Like that's the supply part
of the demand
that we're working on right now.
100%. I think on the same side of things. It ran away from me, Taylor. My thought did.
I feel you. This is like one of the first streams where I actually feel like I'm keeping up, and I don't know if it's the coffee I just had or what, but like, this is wild, because normally I'm you. Normally I'm like, I don't know what I was about to say, but I'm pretty sure it was good.
Yeah, I was. Fudge. Oh, I think before we can start figuring out what these features are, like we have to, because that's where we get into that messy work of like character creation. Like we have that skeleton, and now we need to start drawing out actual features that you can buy and purchase and put onto your character. We have to do the same thing here. We have to determine what these stats are, what those effects are, and then we can say, okay, now we know where we can apply features.
Okay. So let's do something really quick.
Talk about write down the things we need to talk about.
That's exactly what.
Oh my god!
Because we never do this, and we always end up kind of coming into next week's stream like, okay, so what are we doing? And I don't want to do that again. So if you want to go back up to the world economy tag, I'm actually going to put the comment there, and this is just going to be questions. Answer.
I can't see you writing.
So, questions to answer. First off, what is the value of a petty coin in relation to die types? I feel like that's going to be a question that I'm going to say we need to answer.
Yep.
I think it's like integral to what we're trying to do here. You go next. What's a question we need to ask, or we need to answer?
A question we need to answer. We need to figure out the caravan stats.
Okay, yeah. So what resources does the caravan have?
Or just like what the stats are that we're going to base the caravan resources on. Like, yeah, like before we can even get there, like we need to like figure that shit out.
Okay. So what stats or resources does the caravan have? Okay, we need to figure out what does the sliding morale scale look like?
Yeah. Which I think will be a lot easier once we figure out stats.
I agree. Yeah, that's going to be, I think, tied to the first two.
Which also brings us to overworld travel and downtime stuff. We need to figure out, like, Caravan's move speed, which is going to be, we can't do anything like that until, well, we can't do anything like that until we have stats written out, so, like, don't even bother with that.
Stats will be important for that.
Yeah, let's just keep this next stream stuff that we need to answer.
Yeah. Well, if it's next stream stuff, do you think we'll be able to answer all three of these?
No, I think we should keep it to that.
I think let's keep it at the 3. Okay, cool. So,
couple of fun things.
Oh yeah.
Let me hit you with some taglines I've been working on.
Okay.
Vault Peddlers, a game of community, plunder, and bad people. This is the one I really like. Recover relics of antiquity, forge friendships in fire, and fill your coffers whatever the cost.
I like that.
I've been thinking about drawing some stuff.
Oh fuck yeah, you need to. Corey's been doing a bunch of like digital art, and it's tight. He drew like the sickest picture of Don Knotts.
I'm a fucking idiot.
It was tight. So good.
So here's another thing I thought we could do to each other. It's not murder-suicide.
Oh, go on.
I wanted to give you homework.
Oh, no. Okay, what's my homework?
I want you to take charge on the contract system.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think you'll be better at it than I am. Just as a caveat, one thing I want to avoid is the contract system being fully in the court of like one player, because I know we have like character classes that exclusively deal with those sorts of things, and I would like this to be a party action, because the idea that first off we might not have a class like that in there. I also think like it should be something everyone should do together. But that I think you will be better at that than me.
I like that idea. Okay, cool. So it's going to be group-based, not solely GM. Yeah, tight. I can definitely look into that and see what options there are. Thankfully, I may have 2 weeks before we get to that, because I'm pretty sure next week's stream is going to be taken up with these 3 questions.
I also have to tell. I have to tell a potential person who's going to be on our stream when we're playing the Quiet Air. So I told him possibly next week, but I'll tell him the week after. I think
it's going to be the week after.
He seems very excited about it, though, and
very cool. Very cool. I'm excited. We're going to have an old friend on.
Actually, it wasn't even our old friend. It was my other buddy. But we could have. I haven't talked to him about it yet.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, either way, it's going to be a ton of fun. If you were following us when we were playing Microscope, it was like fucking buck wild, and the Quiet Year, I'm sure, will prove to be no different. So do tune in next week, where we'll be talking a little bit more about world economy. We'll be talking about what a penny coin actually is, how much it's worth. We'll be talking about Caravan stats, and we'll be talking about morale scales within that caravan. But for now, we are done with our relatively short stream. We'll be back next Wednesday, because we're finally on a fucking regular schedule again. So we will see you on Wednesday between 5:30 and 6. And looking forward to seeing you all then.
Rest easy, peddler! Your contract is fulfilled!